afternoon. Thanks for joining us on Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. There's nothing better than driving through Vermont and seeing cattle grazing on the landscape, one of the many things that makes Vermont, Vermont. And joining me today to talk about cows, forage, and milk production are Heather Darby, UVM Extension agronomist, and Sara Ziegler, who works with Heather as a research specialist. Welcome to both of you.
Hi, how are you?
We're happy to have you. And first I want to start by thanking you, Heather, for participating in our 70th anniversary special. That was incredible, and it was great to hear about your dad's love for Across the Fence. So thank you for that.
I hope to be on the 100th.
Oh, and we hope to have you. We hope to have you. And you've been working as an agronomist for UVM for almost 25 years. So what kind of changes have you seen over that time, and how you guys work with organic dairy farms?
Yeah, well, when I first started, actually, there weren't that many organic dairy producers in Vermont. And right about the time I started, there was a huge, significant anyway, increase in the number of farmers converting to organic. And that number, was consistently rising over the years. And so the needs and support for that industry grew, and we stepped up and started to meet the needs of the organic dairy community.
That's great.
Yeah.
And Sara, I think you've already done a couple workshops. You got another one coming up in Vergennes on the 20th. So what have you been hearing from farmers?
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of great feedback from the farmers who've attended so far, just saying they've really taken a lot away from the days. Not all the information we're presenting is sort of new information, but we're trying to take the time to go into a lot more depth in each topic and then connect those topics to one another. So we're not just talking about nutrition, we're not just talking about forage production and management. It's, how is that management really impacting the quality of feed that they're getting? What does that do for the animal nutritionally? And what are they going to expect from milk production, and then economics from all of that.
And this used to be a one-day conference, and now it's split up over 3 days across the state. So why is that?
Yeah, we just felt that, while we tried to have the one-day location and a central location, it's really hard for farmers to get off the farm and spend an entire day at a conference. And so we felt like breaking that up into smaller events and really trying to get out into each of the communities to reach would be a better way to reach farmers. And so far, people have said that's made that easier for them to attend, which is great.
Sure. And Heather, something we've heard you say before is that Vermont farmers could grow anything. So what does this opportunity offer for people who already have that kind of experience?
Yeah, well, these farmers, right, have been growing the crops that they've been growing for years. And so like Sara was saying, we're just adding more value. We're digging into the details, giving them some really specific metrics to try to meet with the forages and feed that they're growing to ultimately produce more and better quality feed for their farms, so that they can buy less grain and less inputs and hopefully be more economically viable.
Sure.
Yeah.
And this isn't quite in your wheelhouse, but it's something that I'm sure you hear about a lot. How are farmers feeling about the price of milk and that outlook?
Yeah, so, it constantly fluctuates, and most farmers are used to, unfortunately riding that wave. And, the outlook for organic dairy production has been decent, but for most, the price of milk's projected to go down, and that's unfortunate. People are stressed out about that. So preparing to ride the wave again, unfortunately.
Sure. Just another thing to watch.
Yeah, and we're there to help them as best as we can. Yeah.
Great. And Sara, for a non-farmer like myself, it's easy to think that for cows, grass is grass, but do they have a preference?
They definitely have preferences, and that's based on the types of plants that they have to eat, the feeds that we're giving them, but also how we manage them. And when cows are grazing on pasture, they're sort of using their tongues to wrap around the pasture and rip it, not biting with teeth. So you can imagine if there's really tough plants out there, there's really sharp plants or lots of material sticking up that's going to poke their noses when they're trying to graze. They're going to be discouraged from eating in those areas and eating those plants and move on to something a little bit easier and faster to eat.
Sure, and they're not eating the whole blade of grass like you said, right?
No, so usually, the most nutritious parts of the plants are sort of at the top. So cows are going to go for that really quick and easy to grab nutrition, and then they're going to work their way down the plants as there's less and less available. So usually they're eating somewhere between 50 and 70% of what's out there and leaving the rest behind to regrow.
Sure. And do farmers plant specific species to kind of accommodate that preference?
We hope so. That's some of what we're sharing with farmers is, from some of the variety trials that we've been doing, really seeing how the species that we have available differ in the amount of feed that they can produce during the season and when that's available and the quality that they can expect. So, sometimes people are introducing different species in there to increase the diversity, but also capture those differences in productivity and quality potential.
Sure. And Heather, do cows need to eat their vegetables, so to speak, to create more nutritious milk?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Cows that are grazing and eating fresh grass can produce some of the most nutritious milk that people can buy. We don't have grass year round, the fresh stuff, so we work with farmers, both conventional and organic, to store feed, in those big bunkers or those big white marshmallows people see out in the field. So that they have high quality feed even when it's frozen and cold outside. So it makes a difference, the type of vegetables they're eating, and the nutrition in them is critical for them to produce not just a lot of milk, but good nutritious milk.
And during the floods we've had the last couple of years, cow feed has been kind of a concern, so is that still on people's radar?
Yeah, I think the weather is on our radar. There's a lot of just anxiety, I think, about what's going to happen this year. Feed reserves are back up slightly. For most people, last year was a pretty good year as far as forage production goes, but it depends where you are, and a lot of farms are still kind of behind, still struggling a bit to catch up on having the feed that they need. So it'll be around for a little while.
Sure.
So we're going to keep our fingers crossed for nothing exciting this year. We
Nice.
want it to be
Good dairy prices,
boring,
tons of feed.
Right, boring, smooth sailing.
All right. And so what are organic dairy farms doing differently than conventional dairy farms when it comes to pasturing?
Well, it just depends on the farm. We still have many conventional farms that still graze animals as well, and some don't. So some farms have all their cows inside year round in air conditioning, on mattresses, but other farms choose to put their cows out on pasture for various reasons. Sometimes it involves less labor, and they like having the cows outside, when the weather is nice. So it's personal preference in some ways, and sometimes driven by the market that they're involved in. So organic production requires the cows to be grazed. So again, both parties, conventional and organic, graze animals, and do it for various reasons that meet their business goals.
Sure. Is there a different skill set, or is it more challenging to pasture cows as opposed to raising them in a barn?
No, I think it's just, it's just different. And, you learn one way or the other. Most farmers out there today used to graze cows at one point, so it's not like they don't know, they don't know how to do it. But, when you're really, when you have specific management like grazing, you hone in on that practice and try to do it the best that you can. Same with if you are have cows in confinement, you try to make sure they're as comfortable and have as much space as possible to move around. So
Sure.
it just depends.
And do you see a lot of movement between conventional and organic farms? Are people switching back and forth at all?
We used to more back, maybe 10, 15 years ago. Now, with the organic market not being as open as it used to be, people used to switch from conventional to organic, and that kind of switching slowed down quite a bit, prior to COVID. And as I mentioned, the organic milk market is growing and strong, so there is openings to get on the organic market if people want. So yeah, again, personal preference.
Absolutely. Now let's talk some numbers. We actually recently had UVM dairy specialist Whitney Hull on last month, and she said that there were about 440 dairy farms in the state, and 120 of those were organic. So as specialists, what do these numbers mean to you? Sarah, we'll start with you.
Yeah, well, I think that, obviously we've lost a lot of dairy farms in the last decade or so that's always hard to see. But I think, like Heather mentioned, there's lots of new opportunities that we're seeing on the horizon that people are being successful with, so that's really great. And for me as a service provider and researcher in the state, thinking about the relatively small number of producers we have is actually kind of encouraging. We can get out and meet every single one of them and have them come to our events and work with them one-on-one and really have a better chance of making an impact and meeting their needs from an education and research perspective.
Sure. Heather, how about for yourself?
Yeah, I think similar to Sara, it's hard to swallow sometimes. We love our dairy farmers in the state of Vermont, and we're here to support the farmers that are here, all of them, not just dairy, or organic or conventional. And having close relationships with farmers is the best way for us to really support them and provide them information, education, resources that they need to continue to be successful in this state. And who knows, you never know, things might flip and we might see a growth, at some point, and that would be exciting, I think, for all of us. But,
sure.
Yeah.
And we're seeing fewer dairy farms, but larger farms. So is that consolidation trend kind of continuing with organics as well?
Not necessarily. We don't see as much consolidation in the organic dairy industry. I think many of our larger dairy farms in Vermont are multiple family members managing one farm where probably 25, 30, 40, maybe even 50 years ago, each family member would have their own farm. And I think today those family members kind of pool their resources for economies of scale and work together on one farm. So still all family farms in Vermont, which is great. And different members of the family managing different parts of those farms. So it actually, it looks different on the landscape to people, but it's still, families, brothers, sisters, moms, and dads running those farms.
Great. And we're almost out of time, but very quickly, if I want to support the dairy industry by more than just eating ice cream and drinking milk, what should I do?
Get to know them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
I mean, go out and understand what those farmers are doing so that you can figure out personally how to support them. Yeah.
All right. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned earlier, there's one more organic dairy workshop taking place on March 20th in Virgins, and you can go to the Northwest Crops and Soil website for more information. And that's our show for today. I want to thank the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX. I'm Jolie Whitney. This is Across the Fence. Have a good one.